Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Waz, joined as always by my brother, my partner for real, like the Wayans. My man, Nando Vila, what's up?
Man, I was a huge fan of the Wayans when I was growing up. So to be compared
All,
to the Wayans, fuck, that's
all of
like,
them.
Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood was the funniest movie I ever saw when I was eight,
Incredible.
nine.
And
Yeah.
before that, like, I don't know about y'all in Miami, but in New York, man, we were obsessed with In Living Color, which
Oh,
was,
yeah.
Damon and Keenan Ivory Wayans, which we were
And
just
Jim
like,
Carrey.
Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, a bunch of people came out
Yeah.
of that shit. But shouts to the Wayans brothers. We got a dope interview with a mayoral candidate out here in Los Angeles, a cat named Craig Greiwe. Pretty good interview. We're gonna get into that. But first, Nando, they did it. They
They
did
did
it.
it.
They
They did
did it.
it. They did
They
it.
did it.
They
The
did it.
fucking Democrats. It came out. Everybody reported it. All of your basic corporate media outlets reported the Dems are quote unquote momentarily shelving the Build Back Better plan so that they can go after voting rights. You guys will be shocked to learn that me and Nando were like, of course. This is pathetic. This is
Yeah.
this is even worse than I thought the Dems like.
Yeah.
This all of that chat about the new FDR and the
Yep.
new deal and this and that and Biden's the most progressive and blah 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 and the Dems are fucking blowing it again. Wow.
Yeah. So the Build Back Better plan, Joe Biden's top legislative agenda for the first term of his administration is pretty much dead. And it's hard to see this as anything but a massive failure of the progressive wing of the party because they had some leverage. And power only is exercised through force. It's not exercised through persuasion. That's a liberal fantasy.
Yep.
That's a fucking Aaron Sorkin fantasy. There's no arguments. There is raw, naked power. I mean, we talked about succession.
Either you tell them, either you stop what they want, don't give them what they want, or nothing else is gonna come of it. Like there's no two ways about it.
Right. We talked about succession. There's that Logan Roy line, like life isn't about, whatever, Kendall said. It's a number on a piece of paper. It's a fight in the mud for a single knife,
Yep.
and that's true in politics. And the progressive wing of the party, to be fair, I think the squad was kind of against this and they voted against it. But the Congressional Progressive Caucus led by Representative Jayapal, they elected to approve and vote for the bipartisan infrastructure plan, which subsequently passed, under the promise that they would the rest of the party would then pass the Build Back Better agenda, which they have now broken because they had nothing. There was nothing holding them to it other than like a vague promise, and like you don't get punished for that shit anymore if you ever did. What they should have done is held off on the bipartisan infrastructure plan until the other one was passed.
Yeah, we're not doing anything. Because one is way more important than the other.
Exactly. Well, the Build Back Better plan actually helps people. The bipartisan infrastructure plan is a disgusting corporate giveaway, which is why Manchin and a bunch of Republicans voted for it, So they got played like a bunch of chumps, and it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like it was just obvious at the time that was going to happen. Again, progressives, Democrats in general, but also progressives in particular, are so afraid to exercise power when they have it. It's scary to exercise power. You need to have the verve to do it. You need to have the backbone to stand up to.
Especially since Pelosi will never hesitate to try, especially in the House. Pelosi will never hesitate to try to fuck those people over.
Oh yeah, the first chance she gets.
Yeah. I understand why they're afraid of that.
Yeah. And it's really remarkable because, that was their vague little hope to actually not get destroyed in the midterms. How did they pass the Build Back Better plan? In its original form early on in the administration, it would have improved people's lives to the degree that they may have survived a midterm shellacking. Now it seems like they've just accepted defeat and are just going all in on austerity. So they're shelving the Build Back Better plan, massive social spending bill. That's gone. They're reinstituting payments for student loans starting in February in an election year. Like, this is just absolutely insane.
Man.
And the Fed chair, who they voted to reconfirm, Trump's nominee for the Fed chair, a guy named Jerome Powell, just announced that he's going to raise interest rates next year, which is going to hurt people's wallets. So in an election year, the Democrats, who control all branches of government, are choosing to impose economic pain on huge swaths of the country. They're going to end the child tax allowance, which is going to double child poverty in this country, because that was the big thing in the Build Back Better plan. They were going to make permanent the one-time child tax allowance that they passed last year, which halved child poverty, and now they're going to let it lapse, so it's going to double child poverty.
Child poverty's great, Nando. Duh.
It's the best. It's the best. You talk about this crime wave. You know what drives crime? Child poverty. A kid who grows up poor is much more likely to become a criminal than a kid who grows up not poor. So it really is just like a political perfect storm that the Democrats are doing, all entirely of their own doing. And again, this is not just the mansion and cinema.
Bitch about and say, yo, the Democrat. What about we never give enough slack to the Republicans? They're not doing it. Blah blah. It's like, bruh, they're doing what their party does. Because, like, again, and we talked about this earlier, there were Republicans who voted down, I forgot what they didn't vote in favor of, right? And McConnell was like, all right, y'all got cute. Okay. I'm putting this motherfucking tax cut up for a vote, and I dare you motherfuckers to vote it down. I dare you. You can't just go against the party twice. No, you can't do that. But of course, the record-setting tax cuts for the uber rich went through, and McConnell was like, "Look, like these people don't want to fuck with me. They can't play with me. It doesn't matter how And by the way, those tax cuts were politically toxic. They were bad. People were not in favor of this. It's not like it had public will behind it. They just did it. Yeah. The Build Back Better plan has the public's will behind it, and the Dems are just like, fuck it. Why would we do that when we have the power to? Why would we make ourselves more popular? Why would we help people out if we had the power to? And there's your answer. And that's why, again, like, these people are going to come around for our votes and scare us about, this thing and that, and the Republican boogie.
Roe v. Wade. What happened there? What happened there? What have they done to fucking stop that shit?
Right. Exactly. It's just, even when you're in power, you're not stopping anything as a Democrat. So it's just like, look, I don't want to be all nihilist about this, but I don't see how you can view any of this as anything but tragic, and the Democrats as anything but fucking pathetic and venal and semi-evil, to be honest.
Absolutely evil. I mean, think about, just a couple weeks ago, they passed the latest defense spending bill, which they increased vis-a-vis what the White House asked for, which was already an increase. This is coming in a time when we're leaving Afghanistan. We're ending one of our biggest wars. We're ending our longest war in history, and we're in theory ending that war, which would seem to imply that defense spending should go down as a result. Instead, the White House asks for an increase, and the Congress, with huge bipartisan majorities, is giving them even more than they asked for. So, the reality of the American state is that it's, taxes and citizens to fund this military. And as the years go by, the social services, which, are the kind of things that we would actually enjoy receiving from our taxes, just keep getting cut. And we're staring at a political future that is as bleak as I can imagine, which is a weak Democratic president working with a huge Republican majority in both the House and Senate starting after next year's election, in which they work together to implement austerity, to cut Medicare, cut Social Security, the bare bones of the U.S. welfare state. I suspect that's going to happen. And it's absolutely bleak. I mean, if you're looking for any hope in politics right now, I don't know what to tell you. the only real hope you can see going on in the country is, with the increased labor militancy, which is going to, if it continues and if it is allowed to flourish, will change the political calculus in ways that are unpredictable. But right now, it is absolutely bleak.
Yeah, I got nothing else to add. I saw that news and could do nothing but laugh. Like, these guys, they're fucking pathetic. And then, of course, The Hill floats out some tweet about Hillary in 2024. She might be the best the Dems have to offer. Like,
let's go. Let's fucking go. We're gonna turn this show into a Hillary show. We're gonna join her campaign. We're gonna raise money. We're gonna raise awareness about the new Hillary campaign. Let's fucking go, people.
God.
Did you see Pelosi came out today and was challenged on the issue of Congress people trading on individual stocks, which is crazy that it's legal. And she goes, listen, we live in a free market economy. These people are free to participate in a free market economy. So that's it, And it's like,
wait, what? Hold up. And the funny thing, like, that's ridiculous. Like, I work at Spotify, so therefore I own Spotify stocks. They send out this email once every quarter or whatever the fuck it is about, like, yo, you can't. We're about to do the quarterly earnings, whatever, blah, blah, blah report. Like, there's this window where you can't do shit with it, right? Like, as an employee, like, there's rules, right? Like, I have to follow this shit. Like, Congress people get briefings and all kinds of shit. And
they write laws and pass laws.
They have the ability to, like, literally make these things more valuable. It's crazy. Whatever.
Yeah, it is.
I hope you guys stick around. You guys definitely want to stick around because I thought our conversation with Craig Greiwe was extremely illuminating and pretty important. He dug into the nitty-gritty of homelessness, which is just, it's reached full-blown epidemic proportions here in Los Angeles. I think you guys will enjoy checking that out.
Doing well. I'm excited to have a real-life political leader on the show today. We're just hot take machines. We don't actually put our money where our mouth is. We just talk. We don't do anything. So it's always good to have someone who's actually putting their money where their mouth is.
Right, which is, again, we have to introduce mayor candidate for mayor of the city of Los Angeles, Craig Greiwe. What's going on, Craig?
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan.
All right, so Craig, man, just to get right into it, we do want to get a little bit of your background because I think it is important where people come from and, some of their experiences because it informs a lot of their worldview and by extension their politics. Tell the people a little bit about how you came up and where you come from.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't have a typical backstory. My running joke, it's like an X-Men comic book, right? So I grew up in the rural Midwest. Like, whatever you think rural is, go like 30 more miles into the countryside, and grew up incredibly poor. It's the type of poor, like, people talk about poverty and poverty is rampant in this country. It's the type of poor where you, like, it's not even where you go to the grocery store and buy the stuff on sale. It's that you can't afford to go to the grocery store. Like, we had to forage for food in the forest. To this day, I hate mushrooms and asparagus because they grow in the wild for free. So we ate a lot of that. But, like, I absolutely not. Like, people pay $30 a plate at Spago for asparagus. I'm like, no, never. Absolutely not.
It also makes your pee smell bad,
Yeah, among other things. There's really no upside to asparagus, and I'm sorry to the asparagus industry for saying that. But it goes.
They're gonna take down your candidacy. Like, big asparagus is gonna lobby, marshal up the worst, interests and millions of dollars. Yeah, it's
exactly. So and then I was abandoned at the age of 14 because just when you think it couldn't get weirder, right? Like, the original parents that raised me were like, "Yo, we're too poor. You're on your own."
Wait, where did they leave you? They just left, or they left you like on the doorstep of a police station, or like where did they leave you?
Yeah. No, sadly, like, that happens when you're a baby. When you're 14, the firefighters don't take you in. So they were like, "You're on your own. Go find a place to live. Go, get a job if you want food." Right? Like, so I would get up, I would go get on the bus, go to school, and then find my way to work, and then work full-time job until midnight, and then get up in the morning at 6 a.m. the next day and rinse and repeat. I had no idea what college was, much less how to get there, but through a lot of hard work and a lot of really amazing people being kind to me, I found my way through college and undergraduate at USC, and then law school at Columbia Law School. I am licensed to be an attorney, but I do not practice to be an attorney. That is not a thing. And now I serve as chief strategy officer for Rogers & Cowan PMK, which is one of the largest entertainment and culture marketing business strategy firms in the country. So it's a long way from the cornfields, but my running joke is like, I had to spend my whole life, like, no one told me what's happening, right? Like, anyone who has parents and they're like, well, we were poor, but I had a loving family. Like, that's not a thing for me. And I had no one to like tell me how life was. So I had to figure it out. And so it's that can-do spirit. It's that figuring it out. It's that same level of empathy that no one should have to go through what I went through, that informs every single policy, every action I do, every piece of accountability. Because when you are that poor and you are alone in the world, like, you don't have the option to like not be accountable. So it informs sort of everything as to who I am today.
Well, you came to the right show, Craig, because over here it's one of those things, and it's interesting hearing your background because it's at the cross sections of a lot of the things that we talk about here, right? Like, you're a Heartlander, but you're from the rural part of the Heartland, grew up super poor, working poor, like hand to mouth type of stuff. Yet you've intersected with the hoity-toity USC crowds and Columbia, which, while it's an Ivy, and we joke with our friend Daniel Bessner, not a top-tier Ivy, but still an Ivy.
Okay. Calm down. I mean, I'm not a fan of Columbia Law School, but there's still a top-tier Ivy. It's not Cornell, okay? It's not Cornell.
That is, by the way.
They get so salty. The other day we went to dinner with Bessner. Wos and I went to dinner with Bessner, and he showed up with a Columbia beanie. He's like, oh, it's so cold. I just have to bring out my beanie. And we're like, yeah.
Well, listen, you can make fun of people who went to Yale. They're uppity, right? Like, but
okay.
Columbia kids are ruthless. They'll cut you.
Craig, your snidey remark about Cornell is like exactly what Bessner would have said. He's like, perfect. I can't wait for
Dartmouth.
Dartmouth and Ivy. Everybody's just stoned there all day long, and I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, they do all kinds of weird shit, and they get naked and jump into a freezing lake. Like, what the fuck's up with that?
No, absolutely not. And the only thing crazy that people at Columbia do is grow up and try to take over the world through Wall Street, which they've done.
Well, which they've done, exactly. Yeah. And so that's what I mean is that you are of, and I don't want to say you're of the Ivy League or whatever, but you come from those circles and you have a certain kind of understanding for those particular set of people who happen to be the leaders of our country, right? Like, they come from those places, and you come from the places that are most forgotten. So, I'm interested to know, like, why you wanted to get involved specifically politically, right? When sometimes it can feel like so much of politics is so captured by that Ivy League class and that Ivy League group of people. What made you want to get involved in politics?
I mean, let me just be very clear. I have never wanted to run for office in my life. No one in their right mind. Like, I was dropped on my head a lot as a child, and I still didn't want to run for office. Right? I am doing this purely because that after building a movement in LA, Rise Together for 100,000 everyday people who support common sense, there was no one in the mayor's race with any type of common sense or accountability. I'm not doing this because I wanted to get involved in politics. I'm not interested in being governor or senator. I am only running for mayor, and I am running for mayor for exactly what you said, because I come from where everybody's been forgotten, right? Like, I went back and I saw, like, if you go back to the town I grew up in now, it's like it was 30 years ago. Time forgot, right? And it's run down and people are hopeless. And I don't have to go all the way to Indiana to see that. I have to just look outside my street in LA. The leaders of this city have forgotten the people of this city. And listen, I grew up in an environment like that. If I have the smallest opportunity to make sure that the city I live in doesn't become that, I'm gonna kill myself working hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. So yeah, I'm running for mayor in spite of the fact that I never wanted to run for political office, because I've got the plans, and I've got and everybody else who's running is just an extremist who has no interest in serving the people. And so I'm tired of people being forgotten. So I'm here to stand up for the people who are forgotten.
You know, Los Angeles, I find to be a fascinating political city. I'm not from Los Angeles, but I've lived here for 6 years. And it's just, from what I can see in these last few years, like there is kind of this insurgent, progressive movement within Los Angeles. Some of our friends are involved in it, and it can be frankly really inspiring. But then there's also like a sort of equally vicious, if not more, counter reaction to that, and it's a lot of it's driven by the homelessness issue, which to me, I mean, you go to dinner or you meet up with people, and
It's all anybody can
it's
talk about.
it's all everybody can talk about. Like just last night, I was at a dinner and people were
Yeah.
that was the issue of conversation. What are in your mind, like, why is the homelessness issue the way it is here in Los Angeles? I mean, you know, this is a wealthy city. This is a liberal. In theory, it's a liberal city. It's in a liberal state. It's controlled by the quote unquote good guys. What's going on? Why are there so many homeless people in LA?
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna put it in context, and then I'm gonna be just raw and truthful.
Take as much time as you need, brother.
This is quick context, right? Like, I don't underestimate like how big of a crisis this is. You're right. Everybody in the city talks about it, and it is a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented proportions, right? Like 5 people dying a day on the street is unacceptable. It is also only 60,000 people. In a county of 12 million people, it's only 60,000 people. That is a football stadium's worth of people. You're telling me we can't solve a football stadium-sized problem with $8 billion to be like, after Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Katrina displaced 250,000 people. The Texas hurricanes displaced 500,000 people each. They were able to get back on their feet. You're talking about Syrian refugee crisis, 11 million people. We're talking about 60,000 people. You're telling me with billions of dollars you can't solve the problem? The reality is that they don't want to solve it. Why is it a crisis, Nando? I'll tell you why it's a crisis. Because the politicians in this city let it grow out of control because it didn't bug them. It only affected communities of color and neighborhoods that they didn't live in. And then when it got big enough that it spread into neighborhoods where their donors live and their donors started calling, everybody decided to start paying attention. Because as liberal and progressive as everyone who's running in the mayor's race likes to pretend that they are all beholden to the political class because they've been in office for 20 years. And so the only thing that matters to them is what their rich donors say. And so this crisis got out of control because their rich donors didn't speak up about it for 10 years. And so it went from 10,000 people to 60,000 people. Now it's 60,000 people, and everybody's like, I promised to do something about it. Oh, give me a break, right? Like, they have no plan, right? Like, I'm the only candidate with a concrete plan to end homelessness. You telling me we can't solve a football stadium-sized crisis? Please.
So can you tell us what the plan is? Is it like is it a secret plan where you can't tell us until you get elected, or what is the plan to help these people? Because I gotta say, man, it is, and I'm from New York City, right? Like, I moved here 4 years ago, and in New York we have a pretty large homeless population, but I think the nature of New York just as geographically is so fucking cold. People can't be outside that much. And so the homeless problem is not as forward facing as it is in LA, where like everybody's outside all year round. So would like to know what your plan is to sort of help these people.
Yeah. More people freeze to death in LA than in New York and San Francisco combined.
Wow.
Like to put that in perspective. So the reality is, no, everybody else's homeless plan is secret, right? Like, no one else wants to say anything because they don't want to piss anybody off. I have no problem pissing anyone off, right? I'm just going to solve the problem. This is the motto of my campaign, is we're just going to fix this city. And so let me put it into place. If you were going into battle, what are the things that you would need to know about your opponent? How many troops they have, where they are, what their resources are. Like, you would want to know that. You wouldn't just walk blindly onto a battlefield. LA is walking blindly onto a battlefield. So first and foremost, they have no idea who's homeless, where they are, where they came from, or what they need in real time. Experts agree that, and including Community Solutions, who's helped 14 cities move to functional zero homelessness, step one You got to know the problem. You can't solve a problem you don't know. We need a comprehensive real-time database of everyone categorized by need, because you also don't want to put a mom with 2 kids in with somebody who needs 24/7 mental health care, which is what the city has been doing. It's stupid. Know the problem. The second is prevent new homelessness. This isn't rocket science. Studies show it is 10 times cheaper to keep someone off the street than it is to get them off the street. If you had to choose between a car repair and rent, and you chose a car repair so you could keep your job and therefore keep your kids, and now rent comes due and you're short, there should be a 24/7 hotline that you can call where somebody's going to show up and hand your landlord a check the following day. Right? Like, it's not that hard. It's rocket science. You're talking $800. You're talking $1,500. We're spending $50,000 a year per person and not getting anyone off the street. I'm talking about $1,000 a year to keep people off the streets. Okay.
Oh, Craig, you talking about putting money in the hands of the people? God forbid the people got some money from the government and paid their bills and, helped themselves in their lives. We can't do that. We got to save that government money for tax cuts, for real estate interest, and all of that.
Well,
Don't you know that, Craig?
You mean the people who paid taxes should actually receive that tax money back in the form of in the form of services?
Talk about it.
I mean, and then the third element of this is, okay, so know the problem, prevent new homelessness with a 24/7 hotline. And the third is house the 60,000 people. The city has been obsessed with what's called permanent supportive housing, which is like a forever home. And this is where the far left shoots themselves in the foot, right? Because it was a bait and switch. They're like, let's pass a multi-billion-dollar homeless bond. And now they're building condos at $700,000 to $1 million. They just greenlit one that's $1 million a unit. You're going to hand out public housing at $1 million a unit when the average Angelino makes $29,000 a year. What are you smoking? And city council was unanimous in its approval, right? And meanwhile, we built 1,000 permanent supportive housing units and 4,000 people have died. So they're not getting the math right. We need to shift resources. People who need permanent supportive housing will get it eventually. But in the meantime, we need to get people off the street. We need to stop people dying. So my plan is very concrete and very specific. 20,000 immediate shelter-based semi-private rooms categorized by need. So again, you don't have a single mom with 2 kids along with somebody who needs 24/7 mental health care. 10,000 transitional supportive housing units, the tiny homes that you've read the headlines about, at a maximum cost of $30,000 a pop, which is what they cost everywhere else in the country except Los Angeles. 12,000 collaborative shared housing units where 2 people share a bedroom and they build a sense of community and a bond. Listen, millions of college students do it and actually is proven to help people get clean and stay clean. And then 5,000 additional mental health residential beds at 1,200 State Street and 500 substance abuse beds. And with that, you have 50% of people off the streets in under 9 months for less than what we're already spending.
It's because I'm a professional political commentator. People will often, come to me and be like, man, it's just that, these problems, they're so complicated, and they're difficult to understand. And I'm like, the homelessness problem is quite simple. And, it's quite simple and easy. It's like, the homelessness problem stems because people can't afford the homes, and that's the main issue. And the way to get the way to solve the problem is to make housing more affordable and make it so that people who make money can then use that money to, like, it's just not that complicated. Like, other places have figured it out, and I sound like an idiot when I say that, but it is kind of true that these problems are theoretically simple but politically that's difficult.
Well, yeah, you got to question any mayoral candidate who, like, literally every other mayoral candidate is like, this is a complicated problem. I'm like,
right,
no,
it's not.
You're just corrupt as fuck, right? Like, that's
right. So, like, but what are those political barriers? Like, why is it so politically difficult? Like, who is against? Like, who would be against something like what you just proposed? Like, yeah,
what interest would just throw themselves in front of this? If you're saying it's cheaper to do this, it's gonna obviously help, like, actual human beings, right? Like, we know who it's going to help. How could anybody be against this politically?
The circular firing squad on the left is a really good job of shooting themselves, right? So the people who are against this are transparently, you find them within the progressive movement themselves. I've done dozens of phone calls where they're like, no, this is complicated, and no, you can't do this. It's this puritanical approach rather than the practical approach of, okay, 5 people are dying a day. while you're blogging from your basement. I'm going to solve those people's problems and get them off the street. And the reality is there's a huge infrastructure to keep this all going. So I'll give you one concrete example. So there's this thing called Project Room Key, which is, okay, let's just get hotel rooms and we'll put homeless people in hotel rooms and we'll convert them. Everyone else is in support of it. It's a stupid idea. Like, they're converting these hotel rooms at a cost of like $300,000, $400,000 a pop, and they're providing no services with them, right? So so people are out on the street again in a week, in a month. It doesn't solve the problem. 5 service providers were given 5 different Project Room Key sites to bid in a closed bid, meaning it's supposed to be a secret bid to provide services to the homeless who would be living there. All 5 service providers bid the exact same amount in a secret bidding process, and each one was handed one site. And it wasn't like they did $10,000 a year. They bid over $50,000 a year to service per person. And then the city prepays, and there's no obligation for anyone to use the services. So now each of those nonprofits has pocketed millions of dollars to service people who are not required to use those services, and they pay that out to salaries and programs and influence around the city. I am not a fan of conspiracy theories. This is not a conspiracy theory. There is a nonprofit homeless industrial complex that is at the root of this problem. And people don't want to counter it because it's bad politics. It's bad optics to go after nonprofits.
Why?
I don't know. Literally,
like, if it's the truth, like if you tell me in a secret bid, 5 different organizations gave the same exact fucking bid, like this isn't fucking rocket science, guys. Ask yourself where the money's going. Okay, so Margaret Lee Thomas was indicted, right, by the feds for stealing, and they weren't just indicting him for what they had him on. There's a whole lot more that's rumored about there that's coming down the pipeline. City Council voted to suspend him. 3 city council members voted not to suspend him. Why would you not vote to suspend a councilman who's been indicted? And not just like oh, well, maybe there's a little bit of information, but like for 3 years, people have known that this bribe was taken. So like, why would you not vote to suspend someone, right? Like, we have institutionalized corruption in this city. And, if we're spending $2-3 billion a year to house the homeless and we're not housing the homeless, where do you think that money's going? Because it's not going to help people. They're paying $2,600 per tent, $2,600 a month per tent for safe camping sites. That is more than actual rent. Rent an apartment. Man, I'm glad you brought up, because look, to be quite frank, to be candid with the people, I don't pay much attention to the progressive politics of the city of Los Angeles. I know that I should. I know I should be more engaged with what they're doing here locally, but I am not. But I did notice in our exchange and the press release and all of that, you are running as an independent. And Nando, and it's a running joke that we have here all the time about the Democrats, in the sense that all we ever hear is about the Republican boogeyman, and they're going to take over and they're going to ruin your life. Yet in those places where the Democrats are ascendant, powerful, and dominant, we don't live in some fucking liberal, progressive utopia. The bottom line is, in Los Angeles, there are no Republicans standing in the way. They have no chance to do a goddamn thing. The Democrats are in charge, and yet this is what they sow. I don't understand that. So why did you end up running as an independent? Maybe I just answered my own question.
Listen, everybody likes to talk about party, and you're dead on. Here's the deal. Any minute we spend talking about party is a minute we're not spending talking about real solutions for this city. That is the functional truth. Now, so the answer is the Democrats are also in control of exposure around the race. So, I would love to run as an independent in a late breaking change. I'm listed as a Democrat, but because otherwise I don't have access to the panels and forums, right? Like, they silence the party. The Democratic Party will actually silence you and be like, you can't participate in any of the panels and forums. And since there's no independent forum out there now, so I'll call myself an independent. I'm still independent. I am not beholden to any party infrastructure, so I don't expect to receive the Democratic Party's endorsement in this race. But I want to say it's the little d Democratic, not the Democratic Party, the little d
Right.
Democratic principles that underlie my campaign. Right? Like we don't have to talk about party to talk about the fact that like this world is better when the people who need help get that help and get back on their feet. The people need a helping hand. We don't have to. Doesn't make you a Democrat. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. 20 years ago, as an assistant, I got paid $40,000 a year. 20 years later, the holding company I work for pays assistants $40,000 a year. It doesn't make me a progressive to know that that's wrong. It makes me good at math, right? Like, so yeah, I am an independent. I would have preferred to stay a party independent, but that
wasn't feasible.
It wasn't feasible, right? But
this is vibrant democracy that we have, where you have to choose between, like this insane reactionary party and then this just like entirely captured, soft,
but I will
corporatized party. I love it.
I'll tell everyone, I am the most independent person you will ever meet. I'm a straight down the middle of the road centrist. If you're a Republican, you should love me because I'm going to get shit done. If you're a Democrat, you're going to love me because I'm going to get shit done. And the shit that we're going to get done is actually helping people and helping people get back on their feet, helping people move forward. Oh my God, a revolutionary concept, a government that actually works for its people.
I'll tell you what, Craig, centrists or not, no Republican's going to like the idea of giving people money who need it, because they're fat, lazy. Get a job. Why are you taking my tax dollars? You idiot. You're fucking poor. You're dumb. It's your fault. Fuck you. That's the Republican Party talking line on helping people out.
Listen, the Republican Party versus people who vote Republican are two different things.
Fair. That's fair.
So like this country, this election, and I'm not going to get into national politics, but this election wasn't 81 million crazy people versus 74 million crazy people. There's about 30 million crazy people on either side, right? And then there's a whole lot of people in the middle who share common ground. And a lot of people vote Republican because they're like, the same reason you look at the Democrats, you go, what the hell is happening?
No, right? You can't be inspired by the Democrats. I'm sorry.
No, and you can't be inspired by the Republicans. You can't be inspired by the Democrats. This is why 50% of Angelinos don't want anyone who's ever held office to be mayor. Hello, I'm here. I'm not out here to sell a pink Ferrari and try to convince people to buy something that they don't want, right? I'm here to show them that for the first time in 80 years, there's a candidate running for mayor who shares their point of view, who shares their philosophy. So if you want to burn it all down, I'm not your candidate. You want to show up on January 6th, I'm not your candidate. You want to move forward, great. And you know what? People who vote Republican, like, don't toe the Republican Party line, right? The BS about that people are buying into on the extreme left or the extreme right, it's not my jam, right?
Well, so we mentioned how homelessness is like the big issue, but like, what other stuff would you want to do if you were mayor? Imagine you became mayor. What else is on the agenda? Are we going to rename the Crypto.com Stadium back to the Staples Center, or like the Kobe Bryant Arena? Like that, I feel like that plank would win in Los Angeles.
I represented Kobe for the last 4 years of his life, so I'm a big fan of that. I mean, listen, we renamed an arena from an office supply store to a crypto currency. Like, what's the difference? Like, we forget. It's like we all knew it called Staples Center, but it was an office supply store. Okay, so like, I'm not that attached to the word Staples, but I am the only candidate with actual written plans in homelessness. The only plan that exists in Los Angeles to eliminate homelessness in under 4 years. Affordability, crime, and corruption. We'll go to crime next because it's on everybody's mind, right? Mm-hmm. Crime. There are a lot of people who are like, oh, crime's not that bad and crime's not going up. I'm like, okay, I don't know what headlines they're reading, but it's BS, right? The reality is that crime is rising, and even more. Even if crime weren't rising, people feel
less safe. Yeah, that matters.
And so how people feel matters. You want to deal with the truth. You want to deal with the truth as people feel it, because one of those is going to move you forward, right? And the reality is people feel less safe. And the smash and grabs, all of that stuff. Here's the number one way you reduce crime. The police currently spend 34% of their time dealing with 60,000 homeless people. 34%. What do you think happens to the crime rate in any American city if you cut the police force overnight by a third? Right? That's what we've done in LA. So when you solve homelessness, you put those officers back on the street with their neighborhoods, engaging their neighborhoods. Now, that we need criminal justice reform, we need policing reform, we certainly need all of those elements. The second element of that is you need to focus police on just doing police work, which they'll tell you, like, you don't need a police at a fender bender. You don't need, like, we need a whole group of what I call peace officers, right? Not law enforcement officers, peace officers, who mental health experts, addiction experts, folks, dispute resolution experts. And instead of this BS of taking it from one budget and putting it in another, just fully fund it. Right now, you're fighting for scraps for a pilot program in Los Angeles. Why are we pilot programming this? We know that it works. We know that having people out in the communities, engaging with the communities in a non-threatening way, builds positive relationships and reduces crime. So let's just do it. Let's get people to feel safe. And then the third is you do need to fairly enforce the law. While we need and did need and still do need criminal justice reform, Gascon has gone off the rails. I mean, it's off the rails, and there's no other way about it, right? Which is when you are a DA and you are being sued by your own office, you've got a problem. And that's not just I disagree with you on policy or anything else. It means you're a bad leader, right? Like if you are an elected official sued by the very people that report to you, you've got a problem.
Yeah, it's it's interesting with the crime thing. I happen to live in the Valley, where I can't lie to you, I don't feel it. I don't notice it. I don't walk around with a Rolex on. I don't have a certain I read all of the headlines that everybody's telling me about, and I see people getting robbed at the wing shop, on the internet. But I know that it's probably different than from say Encino and Sherman Oaks to what it is in Watts. Or what it is in South Central. Obviously, it's going to be different to even Hollywood, But it's interesting that you would say that we need to address that, because I wonder what the answer is to some of these problems, right? Like it feels like, how do you solve that? How do you solve random crimes?
Well, you pointed out two problems in one, right? Which is that you don't see the crime where you are, and so you're like, I don't know where we are. Like the answer is that is LA politics in a nutshell, right? And everything bleeds south to north. So mark my words, the rising crime is coming for you, right? Just like homelessness bled, right? Like 10 years ago, you didn't have homeless in the Valley. Now you have homelessness under your overpasses, right?
100%.
So it spreads, right? These things spread. And the thing is, it hurts the most vulnerable people first. Rising crime hurts communities of color and marginalized communities and poorer communities first and more than anyone else. And then we start to pay attention when people do a smash and grab on Melrose, right? Because, oh, look, white people are involved. I
seen they was grabbing stuff from white women in Larchmont. I was like, heavens, no, not Larchmont.
Larchmont is literally the last bubble of Los Angeles. I know. I live there. But, I mean, the answer is, it's not just putting officers back on the street, and it's not just the creation of a peace officer corps. It's building relationships, right? You solve crime by crime not happening in the first place. You know who everybody's afraid of? They're afraid of the neighborhood grandmother who's going to rip you over the head if you do something wrong, right? You need to build that type of relationship between law enforcement and peace officers in their communities. You need them out, not in cars, on foot, and you need them part of the community. Right? They need to be a part of the community. But right now, how can they afford to be? Most of our police force doesn't live in LA City proper. They live in Santa Clarita. They live further 2 hours out because they can't afford to live in the city. How can you commute 2 hours in, spend a 14-hour day buried in paperwork, doing things that aren't police work, and commute 2 hours out, and you hope that you've built a relationship with the community? The Obama Department of Justice did a study on this, and it was a bipartisan study, and the number one recommendation was police officers need to be a part of the communities they serve. That is how crime comes down, right? Period, full stop. And we don't have that. We don't embrace that.
Man, Craig Greiwe, candidate for mayor of the city of Los Angeles. I really appreciate you coming on today. It was pretty illuminating. Tell the people where they could check out your platform. I know you got a website and all of that, so people know where to find you and where they could give you money, because God knows the Democrats ain't gonna give you shit.
I need all the money in the world, just to be very clear. So you can go to craigformayor.com. There's a big donate button on there, craigformayor.com. You can follow us on any social outlet at Craig for Mayor, LAFOR. So craigformayor.com, and email us, read our policies. All our plans are there. Reach out. We've got lots of events coming up, and donate. And if you didn't hear that, donate, craigformayor.com/donate. It'll take you right there. But we're going to need, the answer is, the money doesn't go to me. It doesn't go to institutional corruption. It goes to spreading our message out across LA, which is that for the first time in 80 years, there's an actual common sense candidate. So let's get me elected. Guys, I need your help.
All right. Wonderful. Dope talking to you, Craig.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So we're taking next week off for the holiday. We'll see you in a few weeks. I hope you guys get to spend time with your loved ones, have laughs, have drinks, have food, do the whole thing. But we're off next week. We'll see you guys. Peace out.
Later.